Let's just go through some of the major differences real quick, then we'll talk about them. Right away, we learn that Ripley's been out in space for 57 years. And when she lands back at Gateway Station and Burke meets her, we learn Ripley had a daughter on Earth named Amanda. Amy is what she calls her. There's a great scene where Ripley is in this like digital auditorium, like with like, you know, basically like a digital park, more or less, like a hollow deck in Star Trek. And Burt comes in and he discovers that her daughter Amanda was 66 years old when she died. Ripley was gone so long that her daughter lived a full life, got married, and died on Earth. So Ripley's devastated by this. Now, just to mention it, one of the reasons why I think that scene is so utterly crucial, and it bugs me so much that that didn't end up being in the final cut. Now, again, James Cameron in 1985, when he's probably editing this before it comes out in 86, he doesn't have the power that he has in 2023. And he says, I'm going to make a 3-hour Avatar, and you're going to fucking like it. And Disney's like, yes, sir, I'll take some more. In those days, he didn't have that power. So they're like, you got to cut this. You got to get down to 2 hours. It's got to be 2 hours and 5 minutes. It can't be over that. So he has to cut some of these scenes out. And that is one of the scenes. That scene where Ripley discovers that her daughter lived and died during that 57 years she was stuck in space, all thanks to this alien and this corporation, that so informs her relationship with Newt. You better understand why she's so protective of Newt, because she lost her own daughter. So that's part one that, again, very...
And before we move on from that, there's another very important reason. And to me, this is the most important scene that should have stayed in the movie. Another important reason, it gives her no reason to go back to Earth, because in that scene, there's a small line where Burke says she had no kids. She died at 67. She had no kids. Ripley has no one to go home to. No one. That would inform her decisions later, because that really is the biggest plot hole of the whole movie, is why the fuck would she say yes to this? Even with Burke and his charmingness and he's very understanding of her in the beginning, she'd still be like, have a good time, Burke. Hope you all fucking die. I'm going back to see my grandkids. Like she could have done that, but she had nothing to go home to. So all she had to do was fight. And I just wanted to point that out, because those two things, her relationship with Newt and the reason she, for whatever reason, decided to go with them, is important in that scene specifically. Please continue.
Absolutely. So now, from there, I'll hit the major parts. There are little minor, like the investigation, the interrogation scene goes a little longer. You know, there's a little bit more dialogue in there, things like that. But for the biggest part, most of the special edition stuff then takes place on LV-426 once they land. Again, a few lines here and there, even when they introduce the Marines, where they're on the drop ship, things like that, a few extra lines here and there. That great scene where Hudson is saying, ready to get it on, you know it, and then he basically says, hey Ripley, you got nothing to worry about. Me and my group of ultimate badasses are here to protect you. We got state-of-the-art firepower. We got electronic ball busters. Like, he goes to this whole speech basically like talking about how badass they are, which comes back to haunt them in a big way about 10 minutes later. But that's a great scene. But one of the biggest scenes that they do, which I don't know why this was the one that stood out in my head the most. They had these remote sentries, which were like these mechanical guns that they could set up somewhere that if they detected movement, they would fire. And so they had these remote sentries. They had 4 of them. They set them up in the corridors where the aliens were most likely to try to get into their building. Now, we know from the film that actually the theatrical version, they close off the corridors, they seal it up, all this kind of little things they do to try to protect themselves from the aliens getting in. But there's one key thing that gets left out, and it's these sentry guards. And there's these brilliant scenes where the aliens do try to get in, and the guns go off, and it's just wall-to-wall shooting, and you don't really see anything. You just see these guns firing, smoke everywhere, and you see Hicks, Ripley, Hudson intently watching this video monitor, and you hear screaming of the aliens, you hear the screaming of the aliens, and they're all in there. The guns get done, and then the one side gets wiped out. The other side, the other corridor, they get down to where there's like one gun has like 15 rounds left, but it stops, meaning the movement has stopped, which means the aliens have stopped. Once again, talking about the intelligence of these aliens, they say it stopped them because they're all getting ready to gear up and like go fight because they think the aliens are going to be on their front door in 2 seconds. When the final gun stops firing 15 shots short of the exhaustion of the ammunition, Ripley says, "Oh no, hold on, it stopped them." And they're like, "Oh wow, it did. They stopped coming." They realized. And then Ripley says a great line where she says, "Until they figure another way in." She knows that these are intelligent beings. They may be animals, they may be killers, they may be savages, but they are smart. They're going to figure this out. Another speech that happens, it's almost a praise of the killer speech, which I love, which is something I learned from you, Patrick. They're trying to figure out the hierarchy. They're trying to figure out the aliens. And they say, because there's a line that stays in the movie where Ripley says, there's got to be, there's like 150 colonists, all these eggs. Where are these eggs coming from? And she says, it's something we must not have seen yet. There's a scene in the special edition where Hudson actually proposes, maybe this is like an ant colony or a bee colony where there's a queen and she's a big mother and she's the one commanding everything and she's the one laying the eggs. Now, I know that is pretty on point when we actually do meet the alien queen, but I love that dissection when you think about it because that's really what these are. They are bees. They are ants. They all form around a queen. That little speech I loved when Hudson kind of figures it out. He's like, I wonder if that's what they are. They're a hierarchy like an ant colony or a beehive. Because that's what they are. They are ultimately that. And if you ever have seen any study on bees are very smart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're very smart and very, very protective of the queen, like things like that. So these little things that added in. So that was another major part was that. But one thing I kind of skipped over and I want to mention another major part that you talked about a little bit earlier. We actually go to LV-426 before the soldiers land there. It's a great scene where we're actually in the platform and one of the scientists comes over to his boss and he says, hey, I just got an order from the company, Weyland-Yutani, to go search for this spaceship. And there's this terraformer we sent out there to look for it, and now he's saying they found it. And he wants to know if his claim will be honored. Much like Brett and Parker in the original Alien when they're like, we want our full shares. All about profit and greed in this world.
Mm-hmm.
They call back in and say, we found the ship. Will our claim be honored? And they say, I don't see why not. And I'm not going to tell them otherwise because what's the answer I always get when I ask? Don't ask.
Yeah.
We go out to the colony. That's where we see the alien ship. That's where we meet this husband and wife pair. They're terraformers along with their children, one of which is Rebecca. Nobody calls her Rebecca. Everyone calls her Newt. And they find them and they go in there and that's when they come back out and it's Newt's father who is the first person infected and attacked by the facehugger. That's another key scene that gets cut out. We don't see that in the regular version. But I think it adds so much more to the film, especially getting to meet Newt under those circumstances, not when she's basically fighting to survive, living in the air ducts in the colony. Which also another real quick explanation that they didn't mention in the movie or the special edition, but Carrie Hinn, I believe is her name, who played Newt. Yeah. She actually explained that in the story, in the script. Newt got her nickname because they used to play a game. The children on LV-426 played a game where they would crawl around the air duct system and basically play a game of hide and seek. And she was the best at it. That's why she got the nickname Newt, because she could crawl through all these little spaces and she was the best at this game. So when Newt rescues the surviving Marines and Ripley and gets her into the air duct to escape the attack from the aliens, the reason she knows where she's going and what she's doing is because this is a game she's played her entire life, living on LV-426. She knows these air ducts. That's a little detail that was kind of something that didn't get mentioned. Did I